Hello and welcome to the program. Today was a debate day in Ukraine. The two candidates in Ukraine's presidential election, Volodymyr Zelensky and Petro Poroshenko, met tonight in Kyiv's Olympisky stadium. That was their first public meeting of the candidates. Now, for a long time, they were unable to agree on terms for the debate and whether they will be held at all. To discuss the outcomes of this occasion, we're joined in studio today by Dimitri Vasylev. He's a political expert. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So first, this is a one-of-a-kind scenario. This is unprecedented in Ukraine. Two candidates having an exchange in a debate. What's your stance on this, let's say, new means of communication?
Yeah, I think it is a new means for Ukraine, and I think it is some sort of new means for Europe and the world, because I don't think I've seen anywhere this kind of format of big show on the stadium, actually repeating some kind of sense of ancient Greek empires or Roman empires. And it was not actually about real debate and visions of the future. It was just blames and talks about what you have not done or what you've done wrong on both sides. So it was a big show, but I'm not sure that was a real debate and real talk about the future and about senses of where we are right now and where we want to go as Ukraine. So in these terms, it's a new, interesting shape of the show, but still it's not a debate.
So would you say that there was basically since the very beginning this idea? That's something that media and its opponents reproach a lot to Volodymyr Zelensky, the lack of clear program. Did Poroshenko kind of shaped himself by communicating into and fell like kind of in a way in the trap of Volodymyr Zelensky in a sort of way?
Well, in these terms, I think President Poroshenko was kind of at the territory of Mr. Zelensky, because Zelensky is the showman. So the show is his profession. And basically, he's not prepared to be a political leader. He's not prepared to be a country leader. He is not prepared actually to talk about the issues and about the visions. So what was the task in terms of technology, political technology for him and his team, is basically to give as less as possible of his own appearance to media, to televisions, to people, and basically to be covered by his team. And his team representatives were going to different TV shows or interviews and made a lot of statements, but we're not sure they are the statements of Mr. Zelensky. And basically what he's done, he's been waiting until the last moment in order to make a show, but with this show basically to blame the President Poroshenko on the things which usual crowds blame Poroshenko, where he is actually not even responsible for. That's why basically it's a political technology, which I'm not sure will lead to the win of Mr. Zelensky. I still hope that Ukrainian nation will be a little bit more logical than irrational in its choice.
Now, you talked about Mr. Zelensky's statement and the fact that maybe it's not his. Let's listen to a soundbite that we have of this debate earlier today.
I never thought that I would be running for president against a person that we unconditionally and thoroughly chose as a president in 2014. And interestingly, I was supporting President Poroshenko. It is true, but I was wrong. I never thought that his new life is going to be barely living.
Now, here's something interesting. You said that earlier that Volodymyr Zelensky puts himself and uses the same argument, as you said, as the crowd blame Poroshenko. So he shows himself as, let's say, a normal, let's say a normal president. What's your stance on it?
Yeah, just to continue what I was saying, Mr. Zelensky is a very good actor. And of course, he loves to read scenarios and to perform it on the stage. And basically what he's done, he had opened a lot of digital platforms and services, basically to ask people for different kind of feedback of what they think about the country, what they think about the power, what they think about the President Poroshenko. And basically he's taken the list of all those blames and stories, which he basically put in his prepared scenario for his speech here. And that is not his opinion. This is the opinion of people. Basically what we see that Mr. Zelensky do not actually represented himself, his visions for the future of the country, and sometimes he was really critically wrong in his wording. For example, he called people who fight, basically terrorists, and those who came from Russia, he calls them rebels. So in these terms, when he calls them rebels in Donbass, it means that actually he puts a situation what is going on in Donbass right now as an internal thing for Ukraine, like a civil war. Yeah. It can bring to real trouble for Ukraine, and it can actually diminish all the sanctions against Russia.
Because it's a rhetoric that has been abandoned a while ago. Now they are, and we know that they are pro-Russian militants. They are Russian-led militants. They're not separatists or rebels.
And what is crazy, Zelensky can put it back. And what many people in this country are afraid of, that Mr. Zelensky is a very good picture, or how people call hologram. And in fact, behind him, there are a lot of guys who will be taking decisions of what to do and how to do. And in many times, we're afraid it can be not for the interest of the country, not for the interest of Ukrainian people, but for commercial interests of some other people who we don't even know.
We're gonna come back to this topic of the people maybe behind Zelensky. I'm just gonna play the devil's advocacy here a little bit, because the fact that maybe, as you said, it checked through certain platforms, you know, the willingness or the ideals or maybe the problems of Ukrainian citizens, isn't that what a president is supposed to do, to listen to his citizens' demands and respond to that?
You know, in most of the country, president is called a leader of the nation. What is the role of the leader? Leader must hear people, must listen to people, but then he's got to give answers. And I think Zelensky didn't give any answer. He basically repeated what people say, but he doesn't suggest anything which can lead country to a better place. And this is the problem. And I think what is suggested by the President Poroshenko, he's showing the vision. And this is a lot of signs of leadership, which actually makes people's life harder and more difficult, but actually in a while it will bring to a better life to everybody. I mean, I don't say that Poroshenko is good or Zelensky is bad. I'm saying that actually this is a different approach, where on one hand we see the leadership, and on the other hand there is no leadership.
The Western media, as you talked about the image of Volodymyr Zelensky, and it's quite interesting because some Western media compared him to, let's say, the Ukrainian Trump. I would personally more compare him to Macron in France. Young, new face, new man. Is it really the rise of a certain populism? And can we call it populism?
No. I cannot call him Ukrainian Trump. I can call him Ukrainian Macron. It is totally Ukrainian Zelensky. Because it's unique, and nowhere you will see that. Because actor who didn't have any experience in politics, who had any experience in civil or government service, he is taking the lead and can become a president. And it means that actually he's totally unprepared. On one hand, of course, he's saying that his role is to change the system. Because the system is something which is post-Soviet Union. It is perhaps not for these times. We need to do something new and modern. And perhaps this is a good idea. But what exactly you suggest to do, and in what way you will be doing that? Tell your mechanisms. That's something which is lacking, and we don't see this. And I think this is kind of risky.
That's where I was thinking about Emmanuel Macron, because Emmanuel Macron was voted on, was elected on the same kind of idea. Say a new face in politics, and the fact that if not a new face in the system, at the very least he was presenting himself as a new face in the system and saying he would kind of not destroy the system but completely change it. I'm basically going there because today we see the result of Emmanuel Macron's politics, which is basically old world. Under the clothes of the new world. What if it's the same? What about Zelensky?
Listen, there will be so many old faces and old people represented in the government, in the parliament, in the civil service, etc. It means that actually, of course, this is a great way of populists to come on a great, actually not even idea, but on a great talk about some change which is taken very good by people. But in a way, he's got no idea what is new and how you can create this new system. So basically, he's got no design and no construction. And because you don't have this no design and no construction, you cannot actually build anything because there is no design. And I think there will be a great talk for some time if he becomes the president, but it's still not clear. And then in a while, in about half a year, people will understand that actually nothing is changing. Also, he's got great talk. He's very active. He's got talk the talk, and he's got new interesting videos on Instagram and Facebook and some other social media. And in a while, Ukrainians cannot wait for too long, so they will be disappointed very quickly, and that will be the problem for this kind of new political leader, which will become somebody who will be beaten by everybody, in terms of public aggressiveness and disappointment.
But what about the team he has around? Because maybe, as you said, maybe he might lack, as you said, consistency and certain vision, but he can also have people around him who can help him build his vision. And people who are pro-Zelensky, or at least not against him, said that having a good team around can also help him go through that.
Yesterday, he was presenting some people, calling them that this is his team. Some of the people actually were in the government. Some of the people were in different kind of governmental positions. In these terms, they're not new. And most of the people who were saying something, they've been telling, in a way, those reforms which are in action and going on right now in Ukraine. Of course, reforms are something very difficult, and on the way you feel a lot of tiredness. I mean, people. But what they did, they presented a nice picture, which must be at the end. But to come to that end, it takes sometimes 5 or 10 years, and people will not be waiting for that. It's first, and second, most of the people who are there are not clear that actually they will be his team. Because, for example, that was Alexander Kharebin, one of the guys who used to be deputy director of Suspilne Telebachenia, so main Ukrainian TV channel.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier.
And he was represented as one of the members of the team who will be responsible for social issues, language, etc., and humanitarian affairs. And one of a sudden, we were told yesterday by Zelensky that he doesn't know Kharebin too well, and actually he doesn't. He never told that actually he is from his team. And what it says to most of the people, it says that because we heard a lot of statements and messages from kind of members of the team of Mr. Zelensky, but never heard it from Zelensky himself. It means that actually anytime when people will be asking, but your team told that you will go there, and he says, well, it doesn't matter who told this, I've never told this. So how I can do something which I didn't tell? I didn't promise to you anything. So in these terms, this is a huge problem of new modern populist, because it's kind of a modern populist which appears just before our eyes, and I think it's kind of a new creature for political arena, not only for Ukraine, but
it's indeed a global
for
trend.
the world. Yeah, it's kind of a global creature, I guess.
And now, and to conclude this interview, don't you think, and once and again playing the devil advocate here, don't you think that these flaws, that because he's new, because he lacks experience, can also maybe change through times? As you said that Ukrainians, are actually not necessarily patient, and they shouldn't, because some reform have to be done. But can he also learn, through experience?
I hope so. I hope that he can learn, but it can be shown only by the time, and because the time is very valuable creature at this moment for us, because any time there's a time of possible Russian aggression against Ukraine. We don't have time to learn. We have to act now, straight away, to protect our country, to protect our nation, and to protect our sovereignty. And if the president wants to do something, we don't know what, it's a huge risk for the possible future and for our country. That's why I guess this is kind of dangerous experiment.
So for you, it's just an experiment, basically?
I don't know. We'll see. Only time will show. But right now, it seems like an experiment for me.
And I really want to just insist on one thing before we end this interview. Yesterday, the day before, there was an avalanche of news between the nationalization of Privatbank, between certain the Constitutional Court, the law on lustration law, which has been postponed. That's a lot of news concerning certain, as you said, old faces. Can this presidency, can this potential candidate open and pave the way to these old faces?
Not at all, I guess, because he will not change juridical system. And he will not change judicial system. And all the old judges, even if they represented as new faces and new judges, they will act the same. And the system is really not changed. So now Zelensky says that all those people who had done anything bad for the budgets, for against the law, they will be punished, and they will be basically there will be a criminal case against them and decision of the court. But if courts taking decisions which are not even logical, not saying against the law, I don't think he will have a situation when he will be counting on judges. I think in a way they will be acting against him and his populistic position, and it will bring to a huge and very quick disappointment of nation, I guess.
So all in all, and really it's time to conclude, on a personal stance, would you be optimistic after this election? Because the process was democratic, all in all. It went without systematic and massive fraud. What's your stance, and would you be optimistic or pessimistic about this election and what's happened?
I'm always optimistic, and I believe in Ukraine, whatever is happening. I think this nation showed that actually it can survive whatever is happening. It survived 300 years of Russian Empire. A really huge depression from Russia and the Soviet Union. So many people were killed by Russians and by Soviet Union, and even nowadays, 13,000 people are killed in Donbass because of Russian aggression. But people stand, and whatever is happening, whoever is coming for the power in this country, I'm sure that this country will survive, will stand on, and will go on. Talking about Zelensky himself, I don't know. We'll still have to see whom this nation will choose on the 21st April. I do not conclude that it will be Poroshenko. So we have to talk on 22nd, 23rd, then to see what will happen next. And
that would be a pleasure to talk more about this topic.
And by the way, what else I wanted to say, which is very important, what Special Prosecutor Mueller in the United States was saying, we're here not to practice democracy, we're here to protect democracy. And basically, when we are living during the very specific war situation, as we call it, hybrid war. You know, in this time, we cannot just practice democracy. We have to protect it.
And that's on this word that we conclude this interview. Thanks again. It was a
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
That was Dimitri Vasylev, political expert. Thank you for watching the program and stay tuned for the rest.